Hi there, my name is Andrea, and this is High Literature, where I introduce books and stories to you, the viewer. So, in the last video, I read an essay by a J.R. Wytenbroek called Natural Mysticism in Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows. And I want to open that with the actual definitions of mysticism and the word pantheism, which I picked up from this article. I never heard of it before until I read it. The word mysticism, the definition is belief that union with or absorption into the deity or the absolute or the spiritual apprehension of knowledge inaccessible to the intellect may be obtained through contemplation and self-surrender. I think that's really cool. The definition of pantheism is a doctrine which identifies God with the universe or regards the universe as a manifestation of God. I also think that's very cool. I had never come across these. Well, I've heard the word mysticism before, but I never knew what it actually meant. And I had certainly never heard the word pantheism before until I read this article that I found while just digging through the internet, reading everything I could about The Wind in the Willows. This book really just captivated me and fascinated me, particularly the things that were more nature centered. It is a book that I would agree with other people who feel that it's like two stories in one. Um, the other story being focused on the trials and tribulations and misadventures of Toad and Toad Hall, which I found very stressful. I liked all the nature stuff that was more about pantheism and mysticism. And the chapter that really just hones in on that is the chapter The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which, if that sounds familiar to some of you, incidentally, that is also the title of the very first Pink Floyd album, when Syd Barrett was the front man before he went crazy and Roger Waters took over. Um, so the chapter The Piper at the Gates of Dawn is um, really sad and really beautiful, has a happy ending. It starts off very stressful, with the main characters deciding to help a friend of theirs find their missing son. And through that experience, it led them to meeting their god, Pan, and also ultimately finding the lost child, a baby otter. And it is just so beautiful. I am thinking about reading the chapter in its entirety. We'll see in the future if that's something that I decide to do. But for the time being, I also want to dive into the writer themselves. The writer's name, Kenneth Graham. The way his name is spelled, you would initially think that it was pronounced Graham. And then one day I noticed there's an E at the end. And it made me wonder whether or not it was pronounced a different way. And I looked it up, and sure enough, it is not pronounced Graham. It's pronounced Graham. It doesn't roll off very easily for me. And I do catch myself still saying Graham, just so used to that pronunciation. But he was really fascinating. He always wanted to be a writer, and through a series of misfortunate events, he ended up becoming a banker instead. And I'm going to read a part of the introduction to The Wind in the Willows, written by Gardner McFall, which I think is a really interesting name. So let's see here. The duality of Graham's life as a banker and writer, and the degree to which these two worlds were separate, is arresting, although duality was a condition he'd been familiar with as a Scot living in England and as a young outsider in his grandmother's home. However much Graham initially deplored working at the bank, he came to embrace it. It gave him a secure paycheck and freed him from any pressure of having to become a professional writer, which Graham acknowledged would have been torture. When it came to writing, he was, by his own admission, a spring, not a pump. Writing for neither money nor fame, he was an intensely private man. Graham's work grew out of personal need, which lent to his enterprise a purity of motivation. I just think that's beautiful. And it really was helpful to me, and I think would be helpful to a lot of people out there who have this thing, this creative thing that they want to do that's separate from their work that they feel they can't do because of XYZ things stopping them. We all have our excuses. We all find a reason not to leave our comfort zone and do something that we want to do but we're scared to do. And when I read this about Kenneth Grahame, it just made me feel so happy that what could have been seen as a stumbling block or a limitation actually ended up being the way he was able to pursue his interests and his true passions in writing. He wasn't pressured to make money from it or, win all these accolades and high critiques from XYZ famous people. He could just do it and enjoy it and not worry about impressing anybody. And as it says, it lent his enterprise a purity of motivation. And I just think that's ultimately what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants what they're doing to come across as feeling authentic, organic, whatever words you want to use, and not an ends to a means of making a dollar. That sordid topic of coin. And I just really feel that as far as writing about spirituality and connections with the universe, that this book really just nails that perfectly. I think that spirituality is something that is lacking a lot nowadays because of people feeling so disenchanted by it or finding it to be very hypocritical, as something that serves as a means for people to draw lines and say, oh, it is okay for me to feel in a negative way about you because you don't believe in the same things I do. And I think that's very detrimental and just serves for division and suspicion and anxiety, and it's just no good. And I think that the more and more people come to an understanding that spirituality can be practiced in so many different ways, and that it's not something to see as a wall to divide people and to make excuses for why it's okay to feel a bad way about a person. I feel like this book and that chapter in particular really demonstrates how it can be a relationship that you have with nature and appreciation for all living things, all living creatures. We all cry, we all bleed, we all experience joy, sadness, fear, and I think that's something that's miraculously wonderful and not something to go through whatever mental gymnastics people go through to say, no, that's not true, and it's okay for me to subjugate and take for granted these other creatures and other forms of life. That's just sad and mean. And I feel that it's so important for people to instead try and cultivate a relationship in whatever way that speaks to them, be it through nature or through art or through exercise or through cooking or whatever it is that you do that brings you both peace and inflames your passion and makes you feel like your heart is racing and your blood is pumping and you just feel so good about doing this thing. I feel that's your church. For me, it's reading and nature and my cats and being outside and feeling the sun, and that's being with God for me. And I think that's something that a lot of people could get a lot of comfort from, knowing that it doesn't have to be these check boxes where you go through these performative actions. Um, if that's what you like, that's fine. There are a lot of people that I know that, I hear time and time again, I enjoy the ritual. And I love that. I like that there are people that can get such comfort and joy from going through these rituals that they learned either from their family or from friends, or you're seeing it on a TV show. For whatever reason, that's what spoke to them. And same with this, I think that this is a source that could speak to a lot of other people and also help cultivate an appreciation and an understanding for the joy and happiness that other beings can feel that aren't people. I read this article today, actually, about the article was about authors that were famous just from one book. And the first one that they talked about was the writer Anna Sewell, who wrote Black Beauty. And she wrote that through her appreciation and love, I guess obviously for horses, but also not just her love for horses, but just seeing how people treated them in such a way that was unappreciative, cruel, treating them like they were just something that had no feeling and no connection with, they were just a dumb animal. And it broke her heart. And it broke her heart so much to a point that she wrote a book about it. And that was actually the first book I ever read that made me realize that there were other people. I was in the second grade who felt that animals had feelings. There was a time when I was a young child that I thought I was the only person that felt like that. And then I read this book and it just really, really just jumped out to me how these animals were presented with thoughts and feelings, and it was just so magical to me. And then I come across this book later on in my 30s, and this just reminded me of that all over again, and I just thought it was really, really cool. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I really loved that essay that I read in the last video. I really thought that it did a great job talking about the beauty of the chapter and what it meant, and also just wanted to share a little bit about the writer and how their life started off in a way that led them to believe that they weren't ever going to be able to pursue what they were truly passionate about. And it ended up being the thing that set them free and gave them free reign to do how they wanted to approach that thing in their life, and to just don't get discouraged. It will feel so impossibly hard to do so many things, and the best thing that you can do is to just practice at it. And that goes even with what I was saying before about developing a spiritual relationship with whatever it is that speaks to you. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel awkward. You're going to feel so stupid. And it's because it's new. Just like going up to a person that you have a crush on, or sitting down with a family member you don't know very well, or starting a new job with a new boss. It's going to feel kind of weird breaking that ice and starting this line of conversation, but the more you do it, just like everything else, with the practice, it will get better, it will get easier, and it will just be so enriching to your life and will leave you feeling so satisfied, and it's just wonderful. But it is hard. It's not easy, but it's there. And just try and don't stop, and have patience, calm endurance, and eventually it will come. In the next video, I'm either going to read from the chapter or maybe the entire chapter itself, I'm not really sure, or I'm going to go into another story that is in the similar feeling, but not quite. I don't know yet. This is going to be something that I'm just going to have fun with, and I'm just going to kind of jump around. So yeah, we'll just see how things develop. And I guess that's it. So yeah, thank you so much.